Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Thanks for joining, folks. David Asman of Fox News, and you know him from Wall Street Journal and other places, will be joining me in a minute. He's one of my great allies in this fight for prosperity. But I wanted to mention one quick thing before I get to, a couple of quick things before I get to David. Number one, please, folks, get today's Wall Street Journal. I think probably a lot of you subscribe to it, but if you don't, just go down and buy a copy of today's edition, the weekend edition. It is spectacular, and there is a wonderful, long biographical story, almost a full page, about one of my mentors and one of my best friends, Arthur Laffer, who I believe should win a Nobel Prize in economics. There's no question. It's inarguable that he has had more impact on policy and creating prosperity, not just in the United States and not just in the states around the country, but also all over the world, than Arthur Laffer. And it is laughable. It is a joke that the Nobel Prize Committee has not yet given Arthur Laffer the Nobel Prize, because he is no one alive even comes close to Arthur Laffer in terms of the impact that he has had on the way we think about economics and in creating prosperity for people around the world. So read that book, read that article. What he says in here, and he's got the evidence to prove it, and I'm going to talk with David Asman about this in a minute. Every time that I've said this so many times on the show, you're probably tired, folks, of having me say it. Every time we've cut tax rates in the last 100 years, and that was true in the 1920s under Calvin Coolidge. It was true in the 1980s or 60s under John F. Kennedy, who I seem to recall was a Democrat, and in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan, and in Donald Trump's first term from 2017 to 2020. Every time we cut tax rates, good things have happened to the economy, period. End of argument. So let's keep cutting tax rates, because the economy flourishes when the tax rates come down. And there's too many Republicans even who do not understand that argument. It used to be, by the way, when I first came to Washington in the early mid-1980s, that a lot of Democrats understood that. The low tax rates are good for the economy. These were the old John F. Kennedy Democrats. I don't think there are any Democrats today, not in Congress, that actually believe in the power of lowering tax rates. As Larry Kudlow would say, when you tax something, you get less of it. That's very simple. That's the same reason. Why do we tax cigarettes? Because we want people to smoke less. Well, then why would we tax people for working and investing and starting businesses? You're going to get less of it. And when you tax something less, you're going to get more of it. And that is the lesson that we learned from Adam Smith, and we learned from Arthur Laffer, and we learned from people like David Asman. So, David, you're one of my heroes. You do an amazing job on Fox News, and I think we first met when you were at the Wall Street Journal. So, thank you so much for joining this afternoon.
My pleasure. My pleasure. By the way,
okay.
one perfect example of the people who don't get that simple axiom that the more you tax something, the less you get, is Governor Newsom. Just announced, I think it was earlier this week, James Freeman reported it in the Wall Street Journal, a tax on tourists in California to increase tourism. I mean, it was just perfect example of how they don't get it. I mean, a tax on tourism is going to lessen tax, but he has a tax on tourism to increase tourism. They absolutely have the complete opposite understanding that JFK had as a Democrat who really did get the incentive issue in economics. These guys just don't get it at all. And as you say, too many Republicans don't get it either.
And I think one of the problems, David, is that there is a difference between an average tax rate and what you pay at the margin. This is one of Arthur Laffer's great insights, that what matters most is what you pay on the last hour that you work, or the last hour that you last dollar that you earn. And if you raise those, I mean, it's hard to believe, David, you know this, but people are going to be shocked to hear this, but there was a point in the United States where the highest tax rate was, I think, 91%. Which means, like, why would anyone pay a 91% tax rate? Why would, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, the big fight that we have now in the Republican Party is among those few Republicans who really don't get the idea of incentives and taxes, and they continue to say that if you have a tax reduction. Tax rate reduction. We should emphasize rate. It's a tax rate reduction because if you have that, you can increase the economic activity. That means more people are working, they're working more hours, particularly if we get this tax exemption on overtime pay, which is a great idea by Trump. And too many people in Washington think you have to pay for that, and you have to pay for it with other things that are going to make it much more difficult for this bill to pass. I mean, it's crazy. I understand. There are people like Chip Roy who was on the budget committee and voted against it being passed out of committee on Friday. That's why they have to work this weekend. Hopefully, he'll come back and change his mind on Sunday night. But a lot of what he's talking about, I agree with.
Me too.
We shouldn't
Me too, David.
wait on that Medicaid, having not giving Medicaid to illegal migrants, not giving Medicaid to young, strong working men who could go out and get a job and get insurance with that job. We shouldn't have to wait until 2029, which is the bill is now written, for that to kick in. It should kick in immediately, and I think he should get that. Also questioning about why we're retaining all this Biden Green New Deal stuff that's loaded in there. So he makes good points, but he doesn't understand in pricing out the cost of this bill that they're coming out with, that you don't have to put in these trillions of dollars extra that you have to leave, because that's how much the tax cuts are going to cost. The tax rate cuts are not going to cost money. They're going to bring in more revenue by lifting, as JFK said, rising tide lifts all boats. And that's exactly what happened in all those cases you mentioned before.
Well put. By the way, you recognize that voice, folks. That's David Asman from Fox News, who is one of the best economic voices in the country. So I find myself, David, at first I was kind of angry at Chip Roy for voting, and, he had 4 or 5 other Republicans who brought this bill down. But, I've kind of come around maybe to his way of thinking. I think this bill can be improved. I think we can do better than this. And prior to having you on, David, I had Newt Gingrich on, who reminded me that, they did the welfare reforms in 1995, 1996, which had work requirements, and those were a spectacular success. In fact, the people were every study, even the Brookings Institute, which is a pretty liberal group, said this actually worked. We reduced the welfare rolls by 70%, and people tracked what happened to the folks who lost welfare benefits but went into work. They were better off, David, because started to climb the economic ladder.
The poverty rate went down. That is, more people were incentivized to go out to work. Again, we're not talking about, sick, lame folks who are, pregnant and have to take care of 5 kids. No, we're talking about people who can go out and work, but who are not, because they're willing to live a little worse off just to get something for free, even though they can go out and work for it. And when you incentivize people to do that by saying you're not going to get these freebies unless you go out and work, because we know you can go out and work, then they are motivated to go out and work. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, not just a little bit, a lot. Millions of people left the welfare rolls. The poverty rate went down significantly, not just a tiny little smidgen, but significantly. I mean, it helped everybody in that sense. And it was particularly helpful for the poverty level of kids. Because the parents were incentivized to go. Both of the parents were incentivized to work harder. And what do you spend money on when you have kids? If you're a responsible person, I think most people that have kids are, most people, not all, but those people who are incentivized to work harder to get their kids more. And the level of childhood poverty went down. So in all cases, it was successful.
Yep.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
So good, so good, so good.
Get ready, cause Clear the Rack is on at your Nordstrom Rack store. Now through Monday, find incredible deals on Wear Now styles. On sale for even less at Nordstrom Rack. Take an extra 25% off red tag clearance throughout the store from brands like Free People, Steve Madden, Vince, and more. All sales final. The best stuff goes fast. So shop this sale at Nordstrom Rack today. Please see NordstromRack.com or ask a store associate for details.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for an Oikos remix. Like a crunchy storm of sea salt praline pretzels, dark chocolate, and butter toffee, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 Oikos remix varieties with epic mix-ins and 11 grams of complete protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See remixyogurt.com.
No, it's so, and what's so frustrating is that happened, roughly 20 years ago. So we have the evidence. It's clear. It's inarguable. You were exactly right, my friend, on all of those statistics. And yet here we are 20 years later, and the left is making exactly the same arguments they made 20 years ago. Even every single one of them was refuted by real life. I said earlier on the show that my friend, Dick Armey used to say, he was one of my mentors. Remember, he was the House Majority Leader and an economist. And he used to say, I don't need faith. I have evidence.
Right.
We have evidence.
The other thing is, I have to give credit to somebody I don't usually give credit to, but Bill Clinton went against the left wing of not only his party, but of his cabinet. There were members of his cabinet, like Donna Shalala, who I believe was the head of Health and Human Services. She said, I'm gonna quit if you do this. Well, he said, I'm sorry, but you got to quit then. And of course, she didn't, even though he did pass the workfare bill with Newt Gingrich. But the point is that he went against all the left-wing naysayers in order to do that. Now, is there a single Democrat, maybe John Fetterman, maybe John Fetterman in the Senate would understand something like this, but there's so few. I mean, there were few enough back when Clinton was president, but there's so few now. Maybe as they understand that they're sinking even further into the polls. What's their approval rating now is like 20% nationwide for Democrats in general. It's like 45% for approval rate for Trump. So they're just doing terribly with this radical left wing stuff. But the bottom line is it doesn't work. Clinton understood that. Of course, Newt did. They worked together and brought it to fruition. I don't want it to kill this bill. We can't afford to have tax increases.
I don't think it will, David. I agree. Look, there's nobody who wants this bill passed, signed, sealed, and delivered more than me, except maybe you. But we both completely agree. But I do think, we're going to have some negotiations in the next few days. I think most people are looking at what Chip Roy is talking about and say, hey, this makes sense. Let's make these changes and let's move forward with it. He also wants to get rid of some. Why in the world are Republicans keeping half of these Green New Deal initiatives?
I don't know.
I can't even understand it. Yeah.
Well, the answer is that, and we all know that, and everybody listening knows that the answer is that somebody in there among their constituents is getting some money from it, and they don't want to ruffle the feathers of the people who are the small minority of people who are getting some kind of contracts from it. That's the only explanation I have. And whether they're Republicans or Democrats, the most important thing in their lives is getting reelected.
So one other quick issue I wanted to talk to you with about, David, and I appreciate you taking some time out on your Saturday afternoon to discuss this, is I'm a big fan of this 15% corporate rate. And from the first time that Larry Kudlow and I sat down with Donald Trump in January of 2016. So what was that? A long time ago. So, 9 years ago. I mean, he was saying, I want a 15% corporate rate. And we did not get the 15% corporate rate in the 2017 bill. We did get it down all the way from 35% to 21%, which was a huge improvement. But he ran for president saying, I want to cut the rate to 15%. The American public are behind that. They, instinctively, this is what's so interesting. It's just a side point. Americans kind of understand the Laffer curve. They kind of get it. If you tax something, you're going to get less of it. And so why can't the politicians get that?
Yeah, well, I don't know, and what I think you're referring to is the disappearing act at the 15% flat rate for
I know. So why isn't that in this bill?
It just disappeared in the bill. They claim Jason Smith, who's the head of House Ways and Means, that's the committee that actually writes this stuff. He claims that they have this effective rate of 15%, but
I don't like that.
It's going back to all these, deductions and the special interest.
Yeah, I hate that.
Of this
That's not the right way to do it.
No, it's not. It's not at all. It's not clear. So the bottom line is it's got to pass. If this one big beautiful bill doesn't pass, I think there have only been 4 years since 1980 when you've had more than one reconciliation bill pass. So if people like Ron Johnson, the senator who said he wants 3 bills, reconciliation bills before the end of the year, and taxes would be the last one, he's playing with fire, because if on December 31st, on midnight of January 1st, 2026, taxes go up for everybody, and that essentially means that Republicans lose badly in the midterms and probably lose the majority in the House and the Senate, and we're going to have impeachments every week of Donald Trump's last two years. That's the only thing that Congress is going to be doing. So we need that first and foremost. But having said that, if there's a way to get these really critical things, particularly that Medicaid bill, not delaying it until 2029, but putting it into existence right away, getting rid of some of the neat Green New Deal crap that's in there, and this 15% flat rate for business, which Donald Trump talked about for those businesses that do put things together in this country rather than in others that don't outsource.
Well, David, that's why I wanted you on the show, because you and I completely agree. So I appreciate it. That's David Asman from Fox News. He was brought up at the Wall Street Journal and was one of the top economics writers there. And so, David, thanks so much for coming on this afternoon. We'll be right back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC.